Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tapestry 2016. Really happy to have you all here. Yeah. I am Ellie Fields, and I'm one of the chairs of Tapestry Conference, along with Ben Jones, the tall guy in the back, and Robert Casara, who you'll see in a minute. And we at Tableau sponsor and organize the event, but it's really an event of and by the community of people thinking about data storytelling. This is always one of my favorite days of the year because Tapestry brings together people in different disciplines: design, academia, business, journalism, all of whom are trying to think of new ways, new techniques to tell stories with data. And to me, what's really important is the discussion. If we have a provocative and open discussion where any idea is on the table and people can be creative, that's the best success metric to me. And we've had that at Years in Tapestry. But before I go any farther, I want to welcome the live stream attendees. Last year we had about 1,000 people on the live stream, which was great. We're hoping to have even more this year. I know Matt Francis is already on the live stream right now. If for those of you on the live stream, and of course you in the room, there is usually a pretty good discussion going on #TapestryConf. So join in there, and especially if you're in the live stream, you want to get a question to a presenter, we will be monitoring that, and we will be trying to draw some questions out from the social conversation to bring here in the room. So how many of you were with us 3 years ago at Union Station in Nashville? Well, that's great. Handful. How many people were in Annapolis 2 years ago? Great. And in Athens, Georgia last year? That's pretty good. Well, welcome to everyone who's coming back, and it's great to see a lot of new people here as well. We have some great talks lined up for you here today. And of course, we are in Estes Park at the Stanley Hotel, a wonderful hotel. It's beautiful. I mean, this place is charming, right? It's just gorgeous, right? Isn't it charming? It's so charming. This hotel was famously the inspiration for Stephen King's book, The Shining. Stephen King was here with his wife and was walking the halls right before they closed down for the winter. And apparently it was very spooky. They were the only guests. There was one meal left, and that's what they got to choose for dinner. But Stephen King is one of the great storytellers of our time, so I'm hoping that he can inspire us today, maybe on lighter topics than The Shining. But, you know, as I always say, it's all fun and games until someone breaks down your bathroom door with an axe. So I hope that hasn't happened to anyone here yet. So why have all of you come here to this place in the Rocky Mountains? So I think this mountain range is a little bit like data. Bear with me here. The mountain range is massive. It's extensive. At times it's overwhelming, a little bit like data. People go into the mountains for learning and insights, just like they go into data. And despite having had many people exploring the mountains over the years, we still don't know all the stories in the mountains. So I have a particular passion for history, and especially the history of places. So I started looking into the history of this place. And here, like throughout much of the Americas, the native tribes were the first people to be here. The Arapaho were in this area, and then the Utes. And by all accounts, this was a summer place for them. They'd come and hunt and do some other kinds of things here, but they were mainly here in the summer months for fairly obvious reasons. This area wasn't a big part of the fur trade that happened as settlers started coming in, and it wasn't a big flashpoint of the invasion of settlers into Indian lands either. But sadly, like throughout most of Colorado and the West, the Indian tribes did retreat from here, as well as from other areas, as the settlers encroached. But these natives were the first ones to know these mountains. A lot of the place names and trails are still their place names, and they were the first explorers. In 1843, the first American came through here. His name was Rufus Sage. He did some hunting in the area, but he didn't stay. In 1860, the first real settlers to Estes Park came. They were Joel and Patsy Estes, hence the name of the area. They brought 6 of their 13 children, so clearly early fans of probabilities. They stayed for 6 years. The winters were really tough on their cattle, so they ultimately left. But later, Patsy described their time here in Estes Park as living on the doorstep of heaven, which I thought was nice. And then a few more people settled here, and then there was some drama. Because this guy, the Earl of Dunraven, showed up. He was from England, and he loved this area. He thought it was beautiful. And he wanted to create a feudal estate here and some private hunting grounds for him and his friends. This was around 1874. So he started to buy up land, and a lot of people thought he was using both illegal and legal means to get that land. To me, the Earl represents the forces restricting access to data, restricting access to the wild unknown, holding it down, and even imposing the rules of an old empire on a new place. But there were other homesteaders who had legitimate claims, people like Horace Ferguson and Abner and Elkanah and the James family. And they, as you might expect, did not like what the Earl was doing and fought very hard against him. Ultimately, the Earl retreated back to England. To me, these early homesteaders are much like our short story authors today. Did I mention that I like to take liberties in my interpretation of history? Because I do. Our short story authors are people who, in their own ways, are encouraging the open exploration of data and pioneering new ways of data storytelling. The next one is the builder of this hotel, F.O. Stanley. He came to Estes Park around 1900 for his health. He fell in love with the place. In 1909, he built this hotel, the Stanley Hotel. He also built an electric plant to help the hotel, to give electricity to the hotel, and he improved a bunch of roads, and he put buses out on the roads to bring people to Estes Park. He was also instrumental in establishing an association called the Estes Park Protective and Improvement Association, because he wanted to make sure that the land was held in a good state and not overdeveloped. Stanley invested a lot of time in bringing the majesty of the mountains to more people. But he did that in a way that respected and protected the area. To me, this is a lot like Jessica Hullman of the University of Washington, one of our keynotes today, whose research focuses on bringing data to broad audiences. Now, as people were settling here, some of them started to create art, as people will do. Earl Bascom was one such early artist. And it turns out he was also a rodeo performer and a cowboy and an artist, because you could do that in those days. And he created some art that kind of fused these different professions. One of them was this fairly famous one called 5 Minutes to Midnight. Nick Susanis is another one of our keynote speakers. He's also explored the terrain of storytelling through art. He's currently a postdoctoral fellow in comics at the University of Calgary, which is probably just as unusual a title as rodeo performer and artist. If you read anything about the history of this particular area, there's one person who keeps coming up, who stands out. And this is Enos Mills, who was born in Kansas but came here when he was 14. And he fell in love with the place, as many people did. He held a lot of different posts, one of which was called Colorado Snow Observer. Sounds like a pretty good job. And he started conducting nature walks and writing about the natural history of the area. What he's best known for is fighting for the land that became Rocky Mountain National Park. So he did a lot of lobbying, he made some speeches, he brought together different organizations, and ultimately, the national park was created here, and he was able to preserve the land that he really loved. Scott Klein, to me, is our visionary here today, and he's our first keynote speaker. His team not only brings out some of the most innovative and important pieces of data journalism that we've seen in the last few years, but Scott himself has been a leader in rethinking how journalism can work in today's world. You might say he's trying to protect the field of journalism from people who would despoil it or take away its value. This is one of Scott's recent projects, or his team's recent projects, called Killing the Colorado. And in this one, you can actually see the works that created the Estes Lake right below us. There's water piped over from the other side of the Continental Divide through a giant tunnel, and you can explore that and all the other ways that the Colorado is losing water in this interactive project and a couple others. That brings us right back here to Estes Park and to the Stanley Hotel. And there's one more person I want to tell you about before we get to our speakers. Isabella Bird was an Englishwoman, a traveler, and a writer. She was the first female member of the Royal Geographic Society. She spent a bunch of time in this area. She climbed Long's Peak. And to me, she's the last major player in this story today. She's all the people in this room who are exploring data, the mountains of data, in their own ways, and writing about it and telling stories about the data that's out there. And so I want to leave you some words of Isabella Parks. She wrote this of Estes Park. There were wonderful ascents then up, which I led my horse. Wild, fantastic views opening up continually. A recurrence of surprises. The air keener and purer with every mile. The sensation of loneliness more singular. So let us have wonderful ascents, fantastic views, and a recurrence of surprises today at Tapestry. I'm really excited that you all are here, and I'd like to invite Robert Cassara to introduce our first speaker.